Thanks very much. As a broker facilitator, I get the opportunity to interact with students on a regular basis, but it's even more of a pleasure to have met these wonderful student ambassadors who have had many interactions at the internship and fellowship and outreach level with NASA. Our first student to speak is Denisse Aranda. She is a graduate of Florida International University. She has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and she is currently at a co-op with NASA Langley. And she's also pursuing her graduate studies in material science engineering at Virginia Tech. So Denisse?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for sticking around. We're the NASA Student Ambassadors, and this is our story. So as she mentioned, my name is Denisse Aranda. If you say it in Spanish, it's Denisse Veronica Aranda, but I guess everyone hears Denisse Aranda. Either one works. As she mentioned, I got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Florida International University, which is in Miami, Florida. And I'm currently pursuing my master's degree from Virginia Tech as a co-op through NASA Langley Research Center. So I've always wanted to work for NASA. It's been a dream of mine for a while. So when I got the opportunity through the USRP, I joined Research Center in 2008. As you can tell, I just kept coming back for more and for more and for more. I started off with the USRP, then I did the Space Academy at KSC, Constellation Ground Ups at KSC, Ares 1X, then the Ambassador Program, LARS, and now the co-op. So one of the things that strikes me very interesting when people, strangers, meet me for the first time, they see me and they see that I love my job and I have these degrees, and I guess people assume that you're naturally born that way, or you just always like that. But the truth is that my life could have turned out very different if I wouldn't have not had the mentors that I've had that led me up to this point. So I want to go on a little bit of a time travel with you guys. I want to backtrack 20 years where I was born, which is Caracas, Venezuela. And that was one of the pictures that was taken of me right before we left, about 20 years ago. And as you can tell, I was a really cute baby. I'm not sure what happened since, but maybe it was switching countries. So my parents left Venezuela a few years before Chavez was there, and they had pursued their master's degree at University of Texas, and so they just thought that moving here would be a better opportunity for my sisters and I. However, both of them being avid scuba divers and children of eternal sunshine, decided that the only place that we could live would be Florida, and moreover, Miami. So, bienvenidos a Miami. Now, it is one of the most beautiful places in the world. However, the demographics, as you can see, are very different. It is the United States, but in a lot of ways, it's really not. The Miami metropolitan area ranks 7th largest in the U.S. with 5.5 million people. And to put that into perspective, my high school, even this year, has 5,380 students, and that's just 9 through 12. So, to put that into even more perspective, there's more students in my high school than employers at Langley, and that's civil servants and contractors combined. So it's a pretty largely dense populated area. Of those, about 70% are Hispanic or Latin, and 67% have Spanish as their first language. So even though it's paradise to live in, the school systems suffer a lot because of that. So you have very overcrowded classrooms, it's 50 students per teacher sometimes, and you have the added problem of the language barrier. So there's those things that are very tangible and sometimes easy to fix, and there's the intangible things, which is kind of culturally. And through the NASA Ambassador Program, we've been able to reach a lot of these communities, and that's why I think it's so important. As I mentioned earlier, there's been a plethora of people who have been absolutely instrumental in helping me get here and achieving my dream, and the NASA Ambassador Program allows us to be that avenue for these students. So, as I mentioned, my first internship was with NASA Langley Research Center. It was with aerogels, which is a lowest density solid, and we used it for radiation for hypersonics. And Dr. Fran Hurwitz is one of those people. She took me in and she believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Together we published 2 papers, and she's the one that nominated me for the Student Ambassador Program. Since then, we have done a lot of different things. We've done things such as TEDx at NASA, we've done the NASA Day of Education, NASA Awareness Days, and these are some of the pictures. So we had the Nuestro Futuro 2011 Latino Education Conference, and that was really great. That was in Washington, D.C. We had another student ambassador and a NASA Must student there as well. Then we actually went back to Miami, where I got my undergrad for NASA Awareness Day, and as you can see, we got lots of palm trees there. It's a beautiful campus, right in the heart of Miami. And so then we have some other students there that also came in and talked about NASA and internships and other opportunities that they can have. Then this is also something really cool, which I thought was a unique platform in trying to reach minority students. This is the MICI, which is the NASA Minority Innovation Challenge Institute. And unlike some of the other outreach events, it did not require me to travel anywhere. As you can see, I did that from my laptop in my apartment in Virginia. And the cool thing about this was I was able to Skype into different classrooms, and they were able to ask me questions. So I had my presentation, it was live the whole time. Then I had that little box at the bottom that you could see right there. And somebody would raise a hand and ask me a question. And I would read it and I would respond to all of them. Moreover, it was actually recorded and it had a link with my email address. So if for whatever reason the students could not participate in the live discussion, they can watch the recordings and email me after if they have any questions. And I thought that was a really unique way of trying to reach and spread all our experiences with other people. This, I thought, was one of the most powerful things that we've done, or at least that I've done in terms of outreach through the Ambassador Program. As Mila and Melvin, we partner with Univision through the Space Act Agreement. Now, that is Doctora Isabela. She's like the host of the Radio Angel. I actually don't watch Univision, so I had no idea when I told my mom that they're going to be interviewing me for a radio show, and she's like, well, who is it? And I was like, Doctora Isabela or something like that. And she was going to backhand me. She's like, what do you mean you don't know who she is? She's huge. So as you can tell, she's a leading Hispanic radio psychologist. She gets about 8,000 telephone calls attempts per day, and she's ranked in the top 15 Hispanic markets across the United States, and she's played in over 80% of the Latino households nationwide. And this was a 1-hour-long interview in Spanish talking about NASA internships. So I actually have like a 1-minute clip if you guys want to hear it. It is in Spanish, but you'll be able to make out a few words like intern.nasa.gov. That's in English. And there's embajadora, which is ambassador, NASA, still NASA. But if you could go ahead and roll it, it's like 60 seconds or something.
¿Quieres la información, mamá, papá, que quieres que tu hijo pueda llegar a lo más grande? Entra en esoelmomento.com. Entra, por ejemplo, en el intern.nasa.gov, que está representada hoy aquí la NASA por medio de Denisse Aranda. Y no se creen que Denisse es una estudiantita. No, ella es un ingeniero de investigaciones en NASA Langley Research Center en Hampton, Virginia. Ella está haciendo y cursando los cursos.
The sound quality, you can't really hear that well through the speakers, but it's really funny. So they spent the first half just talking about OSSI and how to apply, and then the second half was having callers call in with questions. And that was absolutely terrifying because I had like all my prepared answers, and then I got a lot of questions that I wasn't anticipating, and it was in Spanish, but it was great. So they actually asked to come back, and the next one would be Univision Despierta América, which is Wake Up America. And that's an even broader audience. So that's going to be really great to get those people, and that's nationwide as well. Okay, so then one of the things that I want to mention, just to kind of go back to what I said initially, I feel like everybody here is pretty successful in their own right, and I think we almost have a moral obligation to help those who may need it, because as much as we want to think that the opportunities are equal, they're really not. And especially if you have a certain gift, like I have a certain understanding of that community, it is my moral obligation to make sure that they can come back. And I think everybody shares that philosophy. So, we can talk about all the ways that we can reach them, and sometimes all it takes is one person. And with the NASA ambassadors, you have over 300 of us in almost all 50 states. And if you could just use this, we can reach those people, and our reach could go even further. Thank you.
Thank you, Denisse. Our next speaker is Brewer, and he is a senior undergraduate student in Aeronautical and Astronautical Engineering at Ohio State. He's had internships at both NASA Glenn and NASA Langley.
Hey everyone, so I'm hoping this comes off as relaxed rather than nervous, because I am. My name's Brewer. I'm a senior in aerospace engineering at Ohio State. So I named my presentation, actually it is rocket science. I think that's just one of the coolest things about being a rocket scientist is to get to tell people that you're a rocket scientist, and just, maybe it doesn't go so far in this crowd, but around, people just light up in awe. It's even, more amazing sometimes than when they ask how tall I am. 6'6", by the way. And then I also included this quotation on here. My wings are 1,000 books. I think that just speaks volumes about how important education is. Gil Ralph Wilson was a big advocate of aerospace a long time ago, and my aerospace class actually made some T-shirts at OSU and put this quotation on the back. So I kind of come from the opposite end of the spectrum as Denisse. I come from a small town near Cleveland. My high school had 800 students. It's a predominantly white school, really a great school system. So I grew up, just minutes literally from NASA Glenn Research Center. I would go past it all the time. So I knew about NASA from an early age, and that was really instrumental in influencing me to go into aerospace. So in addition, I'll admit I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and I'd be lying if I said that didn't have some influence on my career choice. And also, when I was young, my parents took me several times to the Cleveland Air Show, and it was just amazing to get to walk up close, go in, around these airplanes, seeing them fly over. Apparently, when I was young, as the airplanes were coming by, my parents said I used to run and scream as they went over and dove to the ground as they flew overhead. And so I guess I had a love from airplanes from a very early age. I also had some great role models to look up to. My father, he's an engineer in Cleveland. He does civil engineering, but he still was a big influence to me to go through engineering. And also, I have an uncle who used to work at Glenn Research Center. He's now actually a branch manager at NASA Langley. So he was a big help in inspiring me and also helped me a lot in getting my internships. So naturally, my first internship was at NASA Glenn Research Center, and I guess the whole title didn't show up there. It was the LERCIP program, the Lewis Educational and Research Collaborative Internship Program. My specific project, I was working on the Stirling Advanced Radioisotope Generator. It's a power system for satellites or space bases or lunar rovers intended to be much more efficient than the current generators. You can see we were doing creep testing on a heater head, which is this glowing red hot article you see right there. That actually helped conduct the heat from the radioisotope source into the generator. And it's high pressurized, high temperature, so it may be surprising that a metal will actually balloon outwards, at such high temperatures and high pressures. And so we were monitoring that to make sure it didn't get too big. There's the generator right there, the full model. So what I actually did, and that's kind of amazing in itself because I know I've heard stories about people who've done internships and they didn't really do anything. They spent the whole time, kind of looking over their intern's shoulder or their mentor's shoulder. I actually got to go in and do things. They gave me the data and said, hey, we need a better way to analyze this data because right now we're getting these graphs that look like this because we're using Excel and we can't do very good interpolation. We can't manage 200,000 data points in Excel. So I wrote a MATLAB code that could monitor these strain data and give you a much higher resolution. You can see the noise in the machine and also help edit that out to give you some good results. And this just astounded my mentor. And I was kind of like, well, it's not just a MATLAB code. It's not that bad. But he was just so impressed with it. And I also, on the other hand, I got to go into the lab. So I got both computer work and lab work. I was there helping collect data. It was a really great experience, being able to sit down and say, hey, I think we could, improve this whole lab setup like this, and then have my mentor go, that looks great, let's do it. It's just really, really phenomenal to be able to do something like that. This is these contact thermocouples we used because we found out that the test articles didn't like welded thermocouples, tend to crack a little bit. So my next summer, I spent at NASA Langley Research Center. Kind of followed my uncle again. He said, hey, I'm going down here. You should try and get an internship too. So it's nice to have a place to stay, being so far from home. So there I was in the Advanced Sensing and Optical Measurement branch, something pretty much completely different than anything I had known. I went from doing engineering kind of stuff to this is more almost physics-based infrared spectroscopy, something I'd pretty much never heard of before, but my mentor said, hey, we found this system kind of sitting in the corner gathering dust. We think we could put it to use on some experiments. Why don't you head up trying to get this thing going? So that's what I spent my summer doing. You can see the system here. We have there's an infrared light source and the sensor is here. And they wanted to do that because they were testing in an arc jet tunnel these ablative heat shields like that you see on the Apollo capsules, on the Orion capsule, and on the Mars Science Laboratory capsule. And they wanted to see what exactly is it that's being burned off of these heat shields. They shield the vehicle by burning. So I got to working on this system. We got some good results in the lab test. You can see here there's H2O absorbing infrared light there and CO2. And I thought this picture here was really appropriate, given that we're supposed to be talking about how cool this is. There's me pouring liquid nitrogen into my detector, and it doesn't get much cooler than liquid nitrogen, which was really great, especially given the Virginia heat that's on that. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to see them put this into use, but it was just, again, a really great experience working with some incredible people at NASA Land. So again, I've met some amazing people through NASA. Both of my mentors and all the people I've met, just incredible people, great contacts. I still send them emails, check out how they're doing, and they check how I'm doing, and it's really great. And in such a short presentation, I can't talk about everything I've done, because in addition to my main projects, you're getting to see tours, you can see all the NASA facilities, the wind tunnels, the other test cells. At Langley, I had the chance to go to a group of, I think it was first to second graders. We're doing a summer science camp. We got to go to the high school and just talk to them for a while. And it was just so great to see such young kids getting really inspired and really interested and inspired to go into STEM fields. They asked some really great questions and sometimes some really interesting questions too. I'm trying to think of any. I can't think of any at the moment, but it was a lot of fun just being able to have an impact on people as well as them have an impact on me. It's just been some really great experiences. So I think I'm going to wrap it up before I start to ramble even more. And that's it. So
Thank you, Ethan. Our next speaker is Ivy Crystal Jones, and she is a doctoral student at Hampton University, and she is studying solid-state laser crystal material development. Ivy?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Ivy Crystal Jones. This is just my title slide. This is a brief, informal introduction. I believe in God. I'm a woman of color, native of Chicago. I'm an only child, Virgo, love music. My favorite color is red, and my favorite food is Mexican. My academic history is just briefly, I started at TU, Tuskegee University, a BS in chemistry, and then I went back home. I thought I wanted to be a medical doctor, so I got a master's in biotechnology, but blood's not my thing. Tuskegee University, I went back and studied nanocomposites, which is related to a little bit of my NASA research. And now I'm at Hampton, where I got my master's in physics, and I'm continuing on with my PhD in physics. I'm just going to briefly go over all my NASA activities. Here I am at the Goddard Space Flight Center in their level 100 clean room. From fall 2004 to 2006, I was a space grant. Summer 2005, I got this cool opportunity to go to Marsha Space Flight Center, and they said they had a bug problem on their International Space Center, so they got a group of us together and we competed. It was fun. That was the microbes in space, and that led to my gravitational wave summer school, where they still haven't found any, but I love it. It's cool research. Jet Propulsion Laboratory, this is where I actually started to move away from wanting to be a medical doctor. And I decided to go to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory because they were studying planetary evolution and how the planets, you can study ice formations on certain planet surfaces, and that can tell you how maybe we came to be as humans. Then I went to the annual planetary summer school, and by that time I was a mechanical engineer, so I was able to work with the configuration guys at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And on one end, we were the students, and there was a glass panel, and there were the real people, and that was super cool. And in 2009, I went to Colorado Boulder for heliophysics that had to do with my optics, solar kind of research. And March 2009, we actually wrote a paper on my actual experience at the summer school, the planetary summer school at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And this summer, I had the special opportunity to work at Goddard Space Flight Center, where we're going to everything in microtechnology. So, of course, you guys know weight and cost and mass is really important to NASA and all their exploration. So I've started this summer to work on a lot of their technologies that they're going towards the microchip. They want to downsize everything and actually put a whole HPLC gas mass on actually a microchip. So that's what I was doing this summer. Super cool. And my best NASA-related research wasn't at NASA. It was actually at the Air Force Research Lab, where I actually worked on a nanoparticle called POS. And actually in 2005, Bush, he actually designated POS to be a technology strategic interest for the United States. It's the first nanoparticle that the United States president has placed as a national strategic interest. My dissertation research now is, of course, the development and spectroscopic studies of rare ion-developed solid-state materials. We can use solid-state materials to make from the laser pointer that I'm using here to basically infrared, all type of laser applications. My spectroscopic studies are basic from transmission to absorption, emission, photoluminescence, both room and life temperature measurements. And the applications vary from optical communications to atmospheric remote sensing. And especially specifically for NASA, they have a program called LIDAR. And if you guys know that the laser that they shoot up in the sky or atmosphere to detect the constituents that they're looking for, it's not eye safe. So when they have their radar in the laser detects an aircraft approaching or some other type of aircraft, not necessarily a plane. But they have to shut down, and that is research that is being lost while those airplanes are traveling over to get those measurements. So with my research, I'm going to be using what you call eye-safe materials. So I'm going to be using lasers that are we already have these capabilities now, but they're not actually eye-safe. So that's what I'm trying to push in my research at Hampton University. And a heartfelt thank you. And I just wanted to briefly show you a couple of cool pictures from my Goddard Space Flight Center. That's a statue at Goddard Space Flight Center of the bust of Dr. Goddard. And I actually had a center tour of the whole center, but this is my coolest stop, was to see the assembly of the James Webb Telescope. Then I got an actual oral presentation from a Nobel Prize winner, which is Dr. John Mather, Senior Project Scientist. That was pretty cool. And they also have business parts at Goddard Space Flight Center, and they have what you call the Maryland Space Business Roundtable Luncheon, and that's where they get a bunch of interns selected together, and you actually are paired up with aerospace companies, not all aerospace companies, but majority of them aerospace companies, and you're able to get contacts, and you're able to take those contacts forward and use it. So it's not just academia and government. You can also use industry can get involved as well in this, like as we've been seeing. And Goddard Day was so cool because I was actually able to get into one of the actual Humvees that they use now, and that 50-pound vest is what the soldiers have to go through. So I just wanted to see how it is to actually feel like I'm doing something. But that's my talk. I'm Ivy Crystal Jones. If you have any questions at the end, I'll be, available.
Thank you, Ivy. Our next speaker is Marsha Cole, and she received her bachelor's in chemistry from Grambling State University, and she's now pursuing her doctoral degree in chemistry from Louisiana State University, and she is also a Harriet Jenkins Fellow.
Hello, everyone. So, I'm from the South. I'm from Dallas, Texas, so, this is the be a very warm type of speech. So you guys can relax a little bit because I don't want you guys to make me nervous, so be too stiff or So what I want to do is talk to you guys about my journey. And I know at NASA it's very cliche to have aliens on your presentation, but as a NASA student ambassador and being from where I'm from, I think it's almost appropriate because I felt like I was abducted at a young age. And so this is me when I was 3. And I felt like I was being abducted by aliens because I was very precocious as a young child. I knew far beyond my age. My parents didn't keep anything from me and my brother. We were always familiar with what our circumstances were. And so you can see there's a picture of my brother pushing me towards some pigs, actually. I was really scared. But I felt like this probably got my face really well and how I was feeling. But they had to bring me back when I was 5 so I could start kindergarten. And this is the journey of how I became the almost PhD scientist today. And I say almost because in May 2012, by the grace of God, I will have a PhD after my name. So I come from Dallas, Texas, as I said before. And what I want to do is kind of bring you on my journey because there are a lot of students that come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds that use their circumstances as reasons as to why they cannot become scientists or why they cannot major in STEM or whatever reason that they use as a crutch. But in my case, it actually motivated me. I persevered through all of those circumstances and triumph. So you can see that in 18 years, being K through 12, I lived in 5 apartments, 4 houses, 2 motels. And even though I lived in those different places, I did grow up with both of my parents. And so even having both of my parents in the household made me significantly different than the other people in the neighborhood because they usually only have one parent in their home. And so you can see that this is one apartment complex that I lived in Garland, Texas, where it's actually condemned now. It's got a fence around it. But this is even one house that I lived in. But through the economical cycle of the United States, my parents have become victims to that, and we lived in a variety of different places. And as a result of living in these different places, I've had gone to a variety of different schools. Mainly when I was in elementary school, I attended 5 different elementary schools. Most people say that's why their grades are bad, that's why they couldn't excel in school. But my parents were not taking any excuses. I also had a hand in my growth, so I made sure I always made good grades. And I attended 2 middle schools only because I was invited to attend another middle school in the 7th grade called Jackson Technology Center. It's formerly known as Jackson Middle School. And I was the first out of several invited students to go through the entire program through a math, science, technology training type of program. And that program took us directly from the middle school to the high school, which is North Garland High School, also known as North Garland Math, Science, Technology High School. And you can see that the statistics of both of these schools predominantly are economically disadvantaged, as well as predominantly are minority. There are more Hispanics and African Americans that were at the middle school that I attended in comparison to the high school that I attended. But overall, everyone pretty much did not have the best economical situation. So I graduated early from high school in 3.5 years, but I still marshaled my class, and I attended Grambling State University. Even though I was prepared to attend the leading schools in Texas, I graduated top 10% of my class out of 589 students, and I felt like I was still going to be attending school at University of Texas with the other 1 through 12 students that had a 4-point ... GPA that I didn't have. So I was very intimidated. So I was working at a physical therapy office, and there was a coworker that suggested I stop working, even though I was making $11 an hour and I thought I was rich. But they said, why don't you leave here and go get you an education, you can make some real money. And he suggested I apply to Grambling State University, and that's what I did. So while I was at Grambling, I had a lot of great mentors, namely Dr. David Hubbard, who introduced me to NASA research my freshman year. I didn't have a lot of funding going to Grambling, which is a historically black college university. But when I went into the chemistry department there, I told Dr. Hubbard I wanted to be a pharmacist. He said, we don't have a pharmacy program. I said, why am I here? And he said, well, I think you can major in chemistry. I said, I didn't do well in chemistry when I was in high school, so I don't think we should be speaking anymore. But he said, well, let me, give you another chance. Why don't you come through here? Let's see what you have. I'll invest in you. If you do well, I'll make sure you graduate with a degree in something. So I went to the chemistry department. He kept his promise. He introduced me to NASA research, which was in collaboration with the John Glenn Center. I did a project on polymerizable monomer reactors, preparation of novel polyamides. And at that moment, I had an exceeding abundance of encouragement and something that propelled me to continue on to STEM research and education. And a lot of mentors, Dr. Robert Lockhead, Dr. Sharon Kody, as well as Dr. Michelle Hines, were all instrumental in teaching me various opportunities via different research experiences for undergraduates. So I also am representing them today. And then I went to Louisiana State University, which is where I'm at now. And this is my research advisor, Dr. Isaiah Warner. And while at LSU, I've had the opportunity to receive a NASA United Negro College Fund Special Programs Fellowship titled the Harriet Jenkins Predoctoral Fellowship. And through that fellowship, I've been able to fund my graduate career as well as be able to do hands-on experience at one of the NASA facilities. I went to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and worked under Dr. Adrian Ponce, who's actually here today, and it was a surprise. I didn't know he was going to be here. But when I was there, I'll show you the research that I did there, but one of the things that was very interesting to me is I actually got to meet the namesake of the fellowship that I had. And this is Dr. Harriet Jenkins, and I'm also staying with some of the other cohort members that came in with me that year. But while I've had the Harriet Jenkins Fellowship, my other research experiences, as well as being at LSU getting my PhD, I've been able to hone my research interest into something that I thought probably would never happen, because there's so many ways I can apply chemistry, and I'm a very curious person. But because of my research, I've been able to do that. So the question was, how did I tie my dissertation research with the research at NASA? Because most people believe that the research at NASA all has to do with space and looking for aliens and rocks and things like that, but actually the research at NASA is even applicable to our everyday lives without, it's just not exactly advertised that way. So my research at LSU is looking at antibiotics and antiseptics and changing them into these things we call gumbos in Louisiana, which stands for groups of uniform materials based on organic salts. These gumbos are a new modern approach to combination drug therapy. So the overall idea is preventing infection transmission, maintaining infection control, keeping sterility, and all of those things. When I found out that NASA has the mission for planetary protection, that's when I was like, aha, that's where my research can fit in. And that's what I did with Dr. Adrian Ponce. And there I studied an inhibitory response using various amino acids, which basically, if you think of a spore as an armadillo, when armadillos are in their ball, they're very indestructible. But when they open is when you can kill them. So there are some bacteria, mostly from Clostridium and Bacillus species, that they try to psych you out when you try to kill them. They go in this little ball. And then whenever you get done trying to kill them, and they think the coast is clear, and they open back up, and then there's like, I'm still here. So in Dr. Ponce's lab, they've come up with this way of identifying the presence of spores. And I looked at some chemicals that can inhibit that process of them going into their spore or opening back up so that we can kill them using some spectroscopy as well as some microscopy. And so these opportunities that NASA has afforded me has allowed me to speak on a variety of different platforms. I've spoken at the NASA Ames conference that was held in conjunction with the United Negro College Fund Special Programs this summer, as well as the Nova Shea Conference. I presented a poster at NASA Ames, as well as my research I did at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And I've traveled across the United States, which I probably wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't received the investment and the support of many others. And then I was a student ambassador. So this is one of the most notable firsts in my family. I'm the first in my family to attend college, to graduate from college, to go to grad school, to get a PhD, to almost get a PhD in chemistry, to do all these things. And then I'm the only one in my family to be a NASA student ambassador. And I probably will have that title for a while. So this is me on a very happy day when I found out that I was a student ambassador for NASA. And this is what I received in the mail. I got this nice plaque as well as a picture of Dr. Milton of an astronaut and a badge that I'm wearing today. And then I got a nice award at the conference this summer with me. And so what is my take-home message? Me being from the inner city, I represent a variety of different people. What do I want to share that NASA has done for me? Well, my whole life, the platform is put the stereo on mute. And what are stereo? What are mute? What am I talking about? Well, stereo refers to stereotypes and statistics. If you mute those stereotypes and statistics,
And how would you mute that? And that would be by the acronym, Maintaining and Understanding Through Teaching and Education, which is everything that you guys have been emphasizing today. And what I want to do is let you guys know that I'm doing exactly the same thing through volunteer efforts. I make sure I participate in chemical demonstrations with the young K-12 students. I participate in the Sally Ride Foundation. I try to use myself as an exhibit to show other students that think they can't, that they can. And in doing so, I try to help cultivate talent and mentorless pools. I didn't really know much about NASA growing up in Dallas, but because of the people that have been placed in my life, I've been exposed to NASA. So if I can reach those other inner city people and just the common people that I see that I actually really don't even speak to, but I have a badge on, now they're more familiar with someone that's at NASA that they can help probably identify with, as well as encourage these inner city youth to be bold beyond the expected. Too much in the inner city are people trying to get what we call at home, hood rich. And hood rich means that you're too focused on trying to get drafted into the NFL. You want to get an NBA contract. You're trying to win the Powerball. You're trying to do everything that does not too much require your mental capacity. Mostly because people are not encouraged to exercise their mental potential. And I want to make sure that I extend that opportunity by showing, yes, I'm a product of the same environment. I've had the same circumstances, and even some that I've not even mentioned, but it does not mean that you're not capable of going beyond what is expected. At the same time, I want to be a host reflection. If I reflect someone that you've seen before, I look like you, so why don't you think that you could achieve the same things that I've achieved? As well as, I want to minimize that bridge between the disadvantaged and the advantaged, which is called the achievement gap that the White House likes to call it. If we could minimize that, then there would be no more segregated thought process about, well, I'm from a disadvantaged background, so I can't do that. That's far beyond my reach. Everything is tangible at this point. But if you can establish educational legacies, then everything would be possible. So now I'm not only a legacy for my family, I'm a legacy for my future family, for the students that I may teach one day, as well as pass by on the street. I'm a legacy now, and if we can multiply that, which we have with the different student ambassadors here, then the whole NASA objective will be much more effective. And so I conclude by just showing my family, it has been us for my entire life. And we've all had a winding road, even though everybody likes to have hope and desire for a road that's straight and narrow. But we've had some curves in our road. And at the end of the day, my brother, who's now serving in Afghanistan, he will soon be home, and my parents were all hoping and sticking together. But I wanted to close with a quote that my father has always beat up in us my whole life, not even having a college degree himself, but he always has a lot of wise words. And that is, the only security in life is the one that you create for yourself. So when someone wants to invest in your future, you make sure it'll never come back void. And that's what I want to leave here with you all today, to let you know that your investments are not coming back void. And that all of us, as student ambassadors, the fellows, the interns, the K-12 students that each one of you guys reach out to, we recognize and we appreciate it. Because without you, there may not be one of us. So I close, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you.
Thank you, Marsha. We have one more student ambassador, Kody Ensley, who wanted to be here today, and unfortunately the winter weather kept his plane from taking off. But he is a senior undergraduate student in computer engineering at Salish Kootenai College, and he's completed 2 internships at Johnson Space Center, and we actually have a video that details some of his internship experience that we'd like to play in place of him being able to give a presentation.
Didn't he? And I could push his arm out of the way.
I first came to Johnson Space Center in May of 2010, and immediately I went to work in ER4, which is the robotics part of Johnson Space Center. One of my first projects was the wire that goes from the tip of the finger all the way back. And right over this knuckle here, the wire can bunch when the finger's flat. It's actually kind of curved out here. Over time that can wear. And we wanted to make the hand more robust, so we had to fix that. Now that I've come back for the second semester, what's really exciting is the work that I did on the hardware the first time, now I get to interact with from the software side, the second time around. The graphical user interface that we've built to control the robot allows me to work on the hands, and so it's kind of interesting to see the same problem from different points of view.
Kody is the kind of student that really takes on whatever task is given to him, looks at it, accomplishes what needs to be done, and then goes above and beyond. That kind of drive, enthusiasm, and energy he puts behind it is contagious.
A big area for improvement is the thumb. If you look at your hand, the thumb actually deforms when you go to touch your pinky. This part of your hand does. And Robonaut doesn't do that right now. So he can touch here, he can touch here, and he can touch here. And that's one of the next improvements probably for the future of Robonaut. There's nothing about Robonaut that's not a 10-step plan. The first step was building the robot, and then testing the robot. We wanted to see if we could do it, and now that we've proven that, we want to see how it performs in space-like environments. We sent him up to the ISS recently, the International Space Station, and I got to go down to Florida and see the shuttle launch with Robonaut on it, which was a pretty amazing experience. Not only to see the shuttle launch, but to know that robot that you worked on is on there, and then you get to see it with the entire team. I also got to go to mission control when the astronauts went to unbox the robot. Now we're going to spend some time testing him on the space station, see how he performs in space-like environment, so that we can upgrade him so that he'll become a full-time astronaut assistant. And then eventually we'd like to see how he performs on other planets, or something like the moon, or an asteroid, or onto Mars. I'm a descendant of the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Indian Reservation of Pablo, Montana. It's a small town, less than 5,000 people. I was born and raised on the reservation, and I went to Salish Kootenai College, which is a tribal college built for tribal students by the tribal elders. So anything that I do or anywhere that I go, I'll remain in contact with him and see if not only we can involve students on anything that I'm working on, but if I can come and teach at the college or give guest lectures or anything like that. I had always said, oh, after I graduate, I'm going to do a PhD, but I really didn't have a concept of what that meant. What I found out is that a PhD is research-based, and that's exactly what I want to do now. What I've found coming from the reservation is that my point of view is different from some other engineers, mostly because I seem to look at systems from an organic point of view. I look at the base building blocks and I see how they're going to grow together. I seem to have a pretty good grasp of how this system over here and this system over here are eventually going to relate to each other. They've taken advantage of that in a couple of situations, and it's been pretty rewarding to see how somebody at the age of 23 can offer something to these engineers that have been doing this for, 25, 30 years.
I think Kody had all the tools he needed when he came in. He just didn't know that and didn't really know how to apply it. And since he's been here, he's shown a lot of growth in his capabilities and his confidence. And that's probably the biggest thing I've seen is his confidence has matured significantly.
When you're on the reservation, it's easy to stay on the reservation and not look beyond your doorstep. And when an opportunity like this falls in your lap and you latch onto it and you hold onto it very tightly, and it takes you places you couldn't imagine, and you see things and you work on things that you didn't even know existed. And people want your point of view. How can you not, come back home and say, look at these opportunities out here. Look at all these things that are right here. You just have to take that step and latch onto them.
Kody's really shown that this can be just a key experience that motivates students to just bear down in the degree program, do the best they can, and set some high career goals and go on and meet them.
NASA is a challenge, but when you step back and you look at it all and you say, wow, look, I did this. And in the end, it was worth it. I got to see a robot that I work in go to space. It's easier to go to other students and say, there are opportunities like this. They may be difficult, but you will get through them. And in the end, it is so worthwhile. It is so worth every step you took to get here, because you look back at all this work that you've done, and you're less than a quarter of a century old, and you can say, look at all these things that I've done. And look, scientists are going to use these, or this robot is in space right now, and I did that. I feel like I've made a contribution, and that's pretty amazing. I pin the reason that I've become an engineer on my parents' investment in hundreds of dollars worth of Legos. over my lifetime. And from an early age, I was given a screwdriver, and I was allowed to take apart anything in the house without fear of reprisal from my parents, specifically vacuum cleaners and toasters. We've gone through a lot of those.
Thank you, everyone. I want to extend another thank you to our panelists. I think you'll all agree there's just an excellent group of student ambassadors. Can you give them another hand?
I hope you leave as inspired as I do, and thinking that working with NASA in whatever capacity, industry, academia, or being one of our student ambassadors truly is a cool experience. So thank you again for what you've done and for the work that you're doing to inspire people coming up behind you. So thanks again for the work that you've done.